Hello, this is Christian here. In this video, we'll be working with the multidimensional arrays or ND. So we'll look at how you can create the two-dimensional arrays, how to create three-dimensional arrays or the n-dimensional arrays, and we'll show you how to traverse a two-dimensional arrays. Probably just going to two-dimensional, but not going to go to three-dimensional. It gets confusing, so we'll just stop there, and we'll do a few coding demo. So here is the 2D table. You see in the other videos, is that it is identical to a table. It has the index of for represents the row. That's the first index. The second represents the columns, and this is how you would code it to access these data. Okay, scores followed by the first index, and then another bracket for the second index to represent the column. Then if I want to get the value 300, I would reference the index of 2 for the row 2, index 3 for column 4 there, and I get 300. How do you traverse an array? And again, using two methods. You can use the for loop or the while loop or the for each loop. This gets a little bit confusing for the for each loop, but we'll see how this is done. So using the for loop versus the for each loop. Again, this is a scores table. To loop using through the for loop, you have to use a nested for loop. It's very common to use a for loop inside another for loop. You can use other loops as well. It doesn't have to be the same type. You could use a for loop and then a while loop inside the nested part, or the other way around. It's completely up to you. But this is the most efficient way, most common way you'll see using loops to iterate through a table. So the for each, as you can see, is get confusing because I need to get all the rows for each row. So I get the table, and then for that table, I get each row. As you can see in rows here, I put the word plural just for you to know that rows represents the entire row 0, row 1, row 2, and so on. But each row has all those data, so that's why I put the word plurals, because again, just for the convention of each array is a list of items, right? So then I need to do another for each rows, and then now I can get the actual value out of that row. And then now I can just echo the value out. And so as you can see, it looks, I still need that nested for each loop. But I don't deal with the index at all, okay? Because I don't care about the index in this case. In some situations you do care, right? But in this example, I just print out the values, so that's what I'll do. And then I'll get the same result for either of these two nested loops. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the parallel arrays versus the 2D arrays. This is coming from the previous examples where I have three arrays parallel. Represents the names of students, their associative IDs, and scores, or test scores. Okay, so in this example, I have three separate variables for three separate arrays. And to use them, I have to loop through every array using the same index in this case, because they are parallel, meaning they match up, right, with the same index, and I get the result. So instead of doing this, what if I, before I go further, what if I have another array to store their classes? What class they get these grades from, or what test is it from? Is it from, or what school they're from, and what their phone numbers are, emails, and so forth. I have a lot of arrays to deal with that. So the better way is just to use a two-dimensional array. And here you have a table, right? I can have, so I move all the names. In this example, I represent the first row as all the names. The second row would be all the IDs, and the third row would store their scores. And it's fine this way. It may not be the most efficient way because we're not used to seeing this way in a table. Usually in a table, you see something like this. So you have your IDs represent the first column, the second column is the names, and then the third one will store their scores. So you have different fields. So this one looks much maybe familiar because if you look at a table or Excel sheet, it will look something like this. So each row represents an entity, right, or a record of the student. So something like that would be more efficient to store data. But in the end, still, you have a two-dimensional array to store them rather than having an n number of variables to store these parallel arrays. Okay, so let's go into the code and see some demo. Okay, so back in the IDE here, I'm going to create a new file. We'll call this one here just 2D arrays. Okay, I'm just going to go through a quick example of what the 2D array will look like, how you initialize it, how you set it, and how you call it and use it. And then after this, we'll do a little bit more practical example in a web page. Something that you might already seen before. So array, you would do just again back to, I'm just going to do like, I don't know, data equals to, you can do using the array function constructor like this. So this is 1D array. To make it 2D, you have to go in here and then for each field, so remember back in the other video for 1D, you have like a number here, right? This will be the actual data for those, right? So a 2D array, I put a note here, 2D array is really just a, you call it like an array of arrays. That's what it is. So that means this is an array of arrays. Well, this is not an array, so how do you make that into an array? Well, you put another array in here, right? So array of array. So we have array again, and then array again. So you can see you have an array of arrays. Okay, and then here, so this is the first index for the outer array, right? The index of 0 represents this, array of 1 represents this, and then 2 represents this, and so on. So it's an array of, in this case, I have 1, 2, and 3 rows, and yeah, 3 rows of 3 columns, right? But I have no data in here, so it'll be 3 rows with no columns. So this is sometimes kind of hard to see, and just for this example, I put some numbers in here. Let's just say I put here 1, 2, 3, oops, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 and 5 over here. So 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9, 10. 7, 8, 9, only 9, sorry. Okay, so I have an array of arrays, and this is a two-dimensional array, or also known as a matrix. Okay, we have a matrix. That's a two-dimensional array. Okay, then that's my array. And if this is difficult to see, you'll see something like this. You break it apart into separate lines so that they're nicely aligned this way. And now, if you look at this, it looks like a table, right? Rows 1, 0, rows 1, row 1, row 2, index 2, and then the column 0, column 1, column 2 index. So it looks much better this way because we're good with visual stuff, right? So now I can echo out this array using the for loop. So then I can say for, now I have to do for each row first. Now you can do column first. It doesn't matter how you do it. Sometimes if you want to print the column by column, or you say column wise or row wise, right? So either way. But the row wise is typical. So you can put row here starting from 0 to the maximum of that row. How many rows I have? I have 3 rows. So how do you do that? Okay. And to do that, to know the actual size, you would have to just do the count of the array. If you do that, that will give you the default row number, which is in this case would be 3. And we're starting from 0 to 2. And then you increment the row. Alright, so that is the row count. And then for each column, I'm starting with this row. For each column, 0, 1, 2. And then you do another for loop in here. This time I'm doing the column. Starting column 0. Now, how do I know when to stop? Well, I need to stop when it reaches 3. But that could be resized to any size. So you don't want to put a constant number 3 here. You don't want to use a constant or numeric literal. You want to say count. And since this is a square or rectangular array, you could choose any row here and then you get the size out of that. So you want to say, I want to get the count of the data of row 0, right? It doesn't matter. And since they're the same, then you should be good there. But if you want to make it so that, because arrays don't have to be rectangular, sometimes it may be like that. So you have an odd shape. This is called a ragged array. It's uneven, right? So in that case, this would not be true because row 0 has only 3 columns, but row 1 has only 2 now. So this is going to be, you have a problem because it's going to be out of bounds. So the safest way is then for every row you have the actual size. So then instead of putting the number 0 here, you could put the actual row in here. Okay, so now it doesn't matter what size in here, it'll always work. Okay, so that's the safer way to do it. So then now I can just print it out. So print, echo out the array called data of row at that column. And I put a space here so you can see. And then after each row ends, so this is the end of each row right here. This is one row, I'm done. Next row, I'm done. So each row ends, I want to put a line break. So BR. I'm printing to the browser. If you print in the browser, you put a BR. If you print it to the console, you put the /n for the line break. Okay, so we'll put a browser first, see what it looks like. So save this, and I'll load this in the browser. And so that you'll see that it looks like that, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 7, 8, 9. If you run this on the terminal down here, I'll just do that anyway. So I'm gonna clear this screen here. We'll do PHP and 2D array. And you have BR because BR is not recognized by the browser, by the console. So you will put, instead of BR, you put /n here. And just for that example, I'm going to save it. So you can see that the result will be the same now. And then now this one doesn't work in the browser because now /n is not, recognized by the browser. It will not parse it as a view, but in the source code you will see it works nicely. And again, just show you what it looks like. If you refresh it, you see that it does not recognize the /n, but in the source view, it's nicely, right? Because this is like the console down here. Okay, so all right. And that is how you loop through the array using the for loops. The for each loop will be a little bit different. And let me just comment this out. For each, that means I have to do, and I put it at top here. So say for each row, for each, and then the array of data as what? As, let's just say, call it again rows. So I got the first row, okay, and so the row, see for each row I'm getting the arrays. As you can see, the data is actually an array. So if you just print the rows out, you get array, right? If you do echo rows, you see that I put down here a space, and so you can see, and I just run a terminal to make it really quick. So if I clear my screen, if I run that, you see that it's just say arrays, right? And it doesn't convert to string because the echo here needs to print a string, but I'm printing an object, so it has an error here. You need to convert to string. Okay, so now to make this work, then for each row, I have to do another for each again. So for each, now rows has the actual data, so you can put here the value. Okay, and then now I can print the actual value in there. I can copy this, put it in here, and then I can say not rows, but the actual value, and then followed by a space. If I save this now, back to the terminal and clear my screen, run it again, you see that I have my numbers here. I did not put a /n. It doesn't work if you do that. You put echo down here, /n. So now it will have that nice formatted table we seen earlier. All right. So be careful when you use it for each. Again, you don't have access to the index, so you cannot know where is the stop, or how you cannot modify the data because you don't know. Here you can. I can say data row column equals something, and then it will change the data. Here you can't. And if you want to do it, you have to do additional work. So you have to put a variable here to track the row and track the column through each iteration. And if that's the case, then why not use this method, right? Because it doesn't make sense. All right. So that is the loop. Now I want to show you here the different ways to initialize array. This is using the PHP 4 earlier. Okay. So to rewrite this using the PHP 5 and later, we will use the bracket. So here again, I put here, this is the outer array. And the inside here, you have each array. So array 1, array 2, array 3. So again, array of arrays. The inside here, just put a number. So if you put the same number, 1, 2, 3, and then here again, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9. So you can see this is maybe much easier and shorter than the one up here, right? If I put data 1 and put data 2 here, for example, then I put for each data 2, and then that would still work. If you put different numbers, maybe so we can show that it does really work, right? And it should. To save that, go to my terminal again, clear my screen, and run it. You see that it has 11, 22, 33, and so on. So this is much shorter. It looks cleaner without the word array. And again, you can see it better if I put into multi-lines. So now it looks just like a table, right? Or matrix. And the for each loop will be the same. If I just change to a data 2, it should still work. And data 2 here, data 2 and data 2. As you can see, a little bit more work here. But I'm going to run this again, have two tables running one after another. This is the for each, this is the for loops. Okay, so that is that for the 2D. Now let's do something a little bit more fun. I'm going to close this and create another one. This will be similar to the multiplication table, so I put here multiply. Okay, you already done this in the other assignments, but let's just say that I want to store some data into an array and so on. So when you create a table, you will use something like I'll define a max row. I'm gonna fix it. Okay, make it fixed. So let's say 5 by 10. So max row, max column, column will be 10. If you want to call it, a different value, this number can be a variable name. You read that from a form field, enter the row, enter the column, and then you put a variable name here, right? Okay, but I'm going to fix it to 5 by 10. So now in the way you normally did, to build this table, you would do something like, I'm gonna go back to this test here and copy this for the header. So put the very top here, or bottom, doesn't matter, maybe down here. This is the header and then the footer here. Right, and then down here I'll put my code goes in here. PHP goes here and then ends it down here. So the content will go here. The table will be here. I'll put here multiplication table. And I can copy this again. Just put it here so we know what this is. Is this to be H1 instead of the title? Okay. So now, if I were to run this file now, let's see if I run it. I have that one there. Oh no, I'm going to overwrite that one. So I have a table here, and the table will be built right below here. Okay. So now, and then I'm going to just do, so we got the definition, you define our max rows and columns. These are your constants, right? And then to build a table, you would usually go down here, right? Down here, right here already. And I'm going to build a table, so you can put a table out here first, just to save me some coding. Table here, and I have, and I'm not going to do that, the column and the row for those numbers. I'm just going to put the actual data. Okay, so we'll put that in here. And you can put this outside here if you want, or put it inside the code. I prefer to put out here because you have a lot of HTML code, so that anything that is in HTML, you don't have to feed that to the parser, so you don't waste time. Okay? Because anything that is HTML, the PHP parser will ignore it, and so it doesn't have to do any additional work, and save yourself some speed and performance for your browser and your engine. So then I'm going to do the for each row, I'll do the count already, right? For each row, I'm starting from row 1. All right. So for row 1, because I'm going to do a multiplication table, it's 0, 0 times 0, 0 times anything is 0, right? So it's not really that exciting. So row 1, and I'll stop it when row reaches including the max row. Okay, so it's a 5 by 10. And then increment my row, and then I'll do for each column, again starting from column 1 until column exceeds max column inclusive, and then I'll just increment my column, and then you print that here. But again, table, I started that, so each table I have, before I do the data, I will echo out the tr. And then once I'm done with that, then out here I have to close it, right? So close my tr. So that's for one row, and then it's just the column. So what do you do here then? So I'm going to do echo the td. And inside the td is the actual data. So the data will be the multiplication or the product of the column times the row, or row times column, it doesn't matter. And then I will close my td. So that is for every column until I reach the maximum columns. In this case, it will be 10. And then I'm done, and I close that. I exit out of my loop, finish all my rows, and I close my table. I'm done. Okay, so let's see if this is true. I might have to put some styling in there because I didn't put any style sheet, so it may look a little bit off. So if I reload this, so here's my table, right? It's completely out of, you can see it. It's hard to see without any divider. So, I mean, last but not least, you can go here and then your style sheet, just put a really simple style sheet here. I'm going to style the table maybe with a background, and then so on. So table, I'll add a background color. I'll call it black. So I can see the whole background, and then I'll style each TD with a white background. So you have the overlay, right? So white on black, so you have a nice border. And the border will be 1px. This is for the table border, the outside border. So 1px, can be a solid, and the color could be red, right? It doesn't matter. And then I need to style the TDs. I mean, by doing that, you can see that I have just the outer table and the background of black. You can't see it. The data is here. So you want the field in here to be white. So you have a white, and then there's a little padding around. You see that cell spacing around it. Right? It makes it really nice. So then I'll do here the TD, and then the TD will have something like maybe a background color of white, and then I have put some padding there as well. Let's go. Force to be 0, I guess. Can make some padding, and I want each width force to have a fixed width. If you don't do that, it's gonna vary, so it may not look nice. Put 25 height as well. Force it to be a square. And then I'll align the text to be center, I guess. Okay, something like that. If you use different color, it's fine, doesn't matter. So then if I refresh my page, again, if I refresh it, you see that now it's kind of nice, right? So that's my table right there. It's a multiplication table. It's a 5 by 10. So it's 1 times 1, 1 times 2, you get all that. 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6, and so on. Okay, so now that is the table that you built in the other assignment. So now this is useful because you actually put the data here only in this scenario. What if you want to reuse this again on another page? Well, you either have to do the whole thing again, recode everything here again, right? Or the alternative way is to pull this into a function. So I could put this inside a function and use that. right? So I could do this, refactor this, put up here in the code, way up here, and we call it a function, build table, and then here, put that inside here, okay? And then inside down here in the style the body, I just put build table, call that, and if I save it, and if I reload, I should get the same thing. So nothing changes, right? Okay, so you can do that. You can reload it again and again. Just make sure you include this file, or not in this case. It's not useful because you don't want to include everything here. So then you will have to factor, right? Take this out, put it to another file, and include it, which is ideal. So let's do that. Okay, so I take this out, create a new file, and I call this one a new PHP file. Include just I don't know, functions, and then you paste it right in here. So there you go. So my functions here, I'm using here, so I have to include that up here, like right inside here, right? So include the file called include function, and then save that. So everything is gonna be, included in this area here. So it will just work just fine. And just to really make that work, I can increase this to just say 15 by 20. Okay, save that and reload my browser and refresh it. You see the issue worked just fine. So 15 by 20, it's kind of big now, but there it is. Okay. So now then, again, if you want to reuse it again, just include that in the function, use the function, and then do it again. Now the question is, what if I want to reuse those data? How do I get those data? Like here, how do I want to get these data and use them again? Right? Certainly, you don't want to, redo the whole thing and then, say this to a variable and use it. So the best way then is to actually use an array. So to include here, use an array to store the data, right? And you just call the array to calculate this and print it out. So this is for building table. I should say build table. I should call it show table maybe. It makes more sense. Okay, but since I already have it built, I'll call it build. So in an array, you would do something very similar, except you create a variable called array or multiplication, like mult is equal to, instead of build table, I call it, you know what? Yeah, this is a little bit confusing. I'm going to call it differently. I'm going to call this one here just to show table. Well, yeah, that's okay. So I'll do another function down here, but I'm going to call a function maybe to like, I don't know, a construct table, although they're kind of the same, for lack of a better term. And I don't have the function yet, so I'm going to create a function down here. The function called construct, again, mistake, can't put a $sign here, not legal. I'm not creating a function here, I'm just calling the function. So constructor, construct table, and then in this table, I'm going to do exactly the same as this. So very similar. So I'm going to copy this and put it here. Okay, which is why I should call it build table, but I'll leave this here so you know the difference, so you can see the difference. So when I build a table here, I'm not going to do any echo and stuff. I'm not showing the data. I'm just building the table. So you see this will be removed and this will be removed as well. So I'm just building the table, constructing table inside the array here. So then here I would say I have to declare a temp variable. I'll call it just table, and this will be just a table of array, right? You can put that here if you want. It's a blank 2D table. That's what it is. Okay, but I mean PHP doesn't care. You can just go, like that. It's fine too. You can replace it. That's the beauty of PHP, right? But I'll just keep this like this so you know that it's an array of arrays. And then when I do this calculation, I'm going to store inside this table. Remember, the array would be like, if you remember the previous part, it looks like a table, right? So we start at index 0 to n and so forth. So here I will say the table at the row at column will have the value of this. Okay, so this, copy this, put it here. So the multiplication, the product of this will be stored into a location at 1, 1 initially, but you don't want that. You want to start at 0. So I put here -1 just to make it start at 0, and it goes all the way to, will be n -1. Okay, so this is the preferred way to do it. And if you put 0 here instead, then you have to put +1, and so on. And you have to reduce this, not inclusive, and so forth. So just a way of rearranging the values in the information. So now, once I got the data, everything's stored in the table, I have to return it back to the mult table. So here I'll just do return the table. And I'm done. So now it returns back to the mult. So my mult here has all the data, and now I can show the table. So to show it, this is to build that here, right? I could use this again if I want to, but I'll do something a little bit different so you can see a little bit different. So here then I would do a function to show the table. So here function show table, and then because this is in the global space, right? I can't access it. I have to pass to it. So I'm going to pass in the mult table. If you don't pass it, you want to use it inside here, then you have to say global mult. Like that, okay? So either way you do it, you have to do one or the other. And this may be ideal, it may not, depends, because if you don't want to put it in the global space, then this won't work. But ideally, you could do this way or the other way. So it doesn't matter in this case. I'll just leave it as is for now. So I can access the global variable for mult. So now the loop then will be similar to this part here. I'm just going to copy this, put it here, and just tweak a few things. Because right now I'm not accessing the actual column and multiply that one there. I'm accessing the table called mult. Okay, so the size, I know that I used the size already, so that's fine. But if you didn't store that inside the reference up here, right, then you have to say mult count the multiplication table and count mult column and so forth. But this is fine. So I'm going to start not from 1 but from 0 because I need to access the index inside the table here. So I'm going to show not the product but the data which already been calculated inside the mult array. So here will be the row and column. Okay, and I think that's all you need to change here. So now this variable can be used around in other places. And let me save this and go back to the mult table here. So down here then, instead of saying build table, I'm just going to call it show table. I'll call it show table instead. So save that and let's run in the browser and see if it's still working. If there's any errors, let us know. So on the function construct table, yeah, I did not have that in the end. So line 3, I missed that. So let's take a look at line 3, what happens. So line 3, and in here it doesn't work because it says this table has not been created yet. So let's do this way. If I put this down here, I put it on the bottom. I mean, if this is all functions, then really I shouldn't be putting here, right? And I'm going to restructure this, okay? So I'm going to let's see, I'm going to pass it to the function instead. So since we learned function before, how do you pass data to it, right? So let's do it this way. Remove that, pass it to the function instead. So down here, I'll just do mult is equal to that, but I want to show it. And okay, one more thing. Let's cut this out. It should be just functions, right? That's why the function is called int functions. So functions only. And it just says it's not being used yet. Well, it's 2 words. You should use a different name, but construct table. I mistyped it. Maybe that's what the reason was. But construct table there. I'm going to go to multiplication, include all the files here. So then here I would do that part here. Okay, construct table. Mult is that. And then the mult is a variable I need to pass to the show table. There. Okay. So again, this is the constant, include the functions. So my functions, I had 3 functions. Okay, will show up. And my show table here takes an argument, a parameter, and I use that inside the function. And then I create a variable called mult. I assign that to the construct table function, returns the table. And then once I do that, I pass it to the function show table as a parameter or an argument, and it prints the results here. So let's save this, and let's go back to the browser and reload one more time. And so here's our table, errors, line 20, line 80. Fix that again. I missed it. What did it say? Offset 20, line 18. So offset 20, line 18. I probably missed something there. Okay, yeah, the reason is because I'm using inclusive here, right? It should not include the max. Okay, we're not going all the way through 15 and 20, it's just 14. Okay, so one more time. Let's reload this again. So there is our table, 15 by 20, just like before. And so that's how it works. Now I have a variable called mult. I can pass this around if I need to manipulate data. Then this variable is now containing all the data. And so I don't have to manually reconstruct this every time. I will only do it once.